With people around the world saying goodbye to Queen Elizabeth II, a new era is now beginning for the British Crown. And when it comes to the relationship between the Crown and Indigenous peoples, what changes could we see going forward? We are joined this morning by Anishinaabe writer and speaker Riley Yesno. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
So King Charles III was proclaimed Canada's new head of state on Saturday, and right away, the First Nations Leadership Council called on him to renounce the doctrine of discovery as his first official act. What would it mean to you if that were to happen?
Yeah, so the doctrine of discovery, following up, this is, I think, a conversation that Canada at large, Indigenous people have been having it, but Canada started having it much more frequently around the Pope visit. And so what the doctrine of discovery is, of course, is a document, a set of papal bulls that basically justified the onset of colonization, saying that there were no civilized people living on these lands, and so it was okay to colonize them. And so there are huge symbolic, things that could come out of revoking that for people. It basically is the Crown saying, we no longer believe that that was justified. And to this point, they haven't done that. So that would be huge. The other thing that I don't have the most expertise on, but I'm curious to see if there are implications, is on a legal basis of, the doctrine of discovery was a document that was used to form legal decisions, especially in the early days of colonization in Canada. So I don't know what the revoking of that document would do, legally speaking.
When the King was in Canada in May, as the Prince of Wales, of course, that time he met with Indigenous leaders and they asked for an apology from the Queen over the assimilation and genocide of Indigenous children. At the time, the Assembly of First Nations National Chief, Roseanne Archibald, said he acknowledged the failures in the relationship between the Crown and Indigenous peoples, but as we know, there was no apology from the Queen. Do you expect to hear that apology from King Charles III?
I would say it's possible in that it would be a good way. I'm thinking if I was in the King's inner circle, that it would be a good way to start establishing themselves in a different way than the Queen was. And so that could be saying, as part of my reign, it depends on what sort of, reign he's hoping to pursue, which could be one of saying like, no, I want to do these things that have been called on the monarchy for years and never happened. And now I'm going to do it. That said, from my knowledge of everything that the monarchy has done, even when Charles was the prince, it doesn't look like that was an especially vocal stance or explicit stance he ever took. So I don't know that there's much, history there to suggest that it would happen in that sense. But I think more so that we should also be focusing on is if they do give this apology, what is necessary in terms of action to make that apology meaningful? Because it's one thing to say you're sorry, but if you continue to do things like hoard the wealth, the artifacts, the resources that you gained through colonization, what does that say, right, about the value of that apology?
And how important that action is. How are you feeling personally about the death of Queen Elizabeth II?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see my inner circles online, the vast array of ways that Indigenous people are talking about it. And I think I'm really trying to sit in that complexity. So, not all Indigenous people are treaty people. And even within treaty people, those of nations that have relationships not with Canada through treaties, but with the Crown, that's a different sort of relationship than, say, Inuit or Métis might have. And then within treaty Indigenous people, there are some of us who have felt very betrayed by the treaty system, who feel like they haven't been lived up to. And then there are other people who talk often about their sacredness, their importance. And that's could evoke, a different reaction seeing the head of the Crown pass. So, there's so many different ways people are taking this. And I think it's important that we're talking about it and holding space for those vast array of ways that people are reckoning.
Thank you so much, Riley Yesno, for joining us this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked this, be sure to subscribe here, or you can check out more Your Morning videos right here.